So how do you actually create meshes inside Modo? I'm really glad that you asked. Thanks for that. We're in a default scene here. This is what happens when you open up Modo. And we can see inside our item list, so like your outliner, our scene, that we have an empty mesh item, a camera, and a directional light. And you might be like, what? An empty mesh? What's that about? And it might be a little bit counterintuitive for you if you come from other applications, but think about it. In every application you have a mesh object, and normally start off with something like a primitive, and really this thing inside the item list is just a container, right, for some geometry. The geometry inside isn't really necessarily relative to the container that it's in. You can move things around, you can copy geometry between items. So Modo goes one step further and just lets you have empty mesh items, and it makes sense once you get used to it. It's pretty cool. So say in Blender where you have to start, if you want to have an empty mesh and not, start off with a cube, then you have to create something like a single vert or whatever. In this, you can just press N at any time, and you can have a brand new empty item and put whatever you want inside it. That's all that really is. Anyway, with that empty selection there, or the empty mesh selected, on the left hand side here, we're inside our modeling tools in the Create tab. We can just start creating geometry. So there's two main ways to do this, and the first one is interactively, so drawing in the viewport. So we can grab something like this lovely cube and just start dragging one out inside the viewport, and you can use these little handles on the side to set your size and move it around, all that fun stuff. And you can see in the bottom left here we have our tool properties, which are active, and they only show by default while you have a tool active. They pop over. And inside Modo there is a concept of explicit tool dropping, right? You have a tool active, you have to say, I am done with this tool, I need to put it down. So once we're happy with the shape of our object, then we press, by default in Modo it's bound to Q, and the first time you start up the application it'll ask you whether you want to have it continually mapped to Q or to the space button. But yeah, there we go. We've created ourselves a cube. But what was that before about dropping the tools? Well, there's some good reasons why that works the way it does. First and foremost, I think it's very good because it makes mistakes easier to come back from. The amount of times that you've had, you're trying to do something and your finger slips at the last minute, like, oh, I want this cube to be this big. No, actually, and then you click outside and it's committed the action. And you have to press Ctrl Z and redo it. Having the tool being something that you drop and you commit to the changes means that you probably make slightly fewer mistakes, I guess. But the second part of that is it enables something which is a relatively newish feature in Modo in the last couple of years, and that's this omni-haul thing, right? So if you look inside our properties, we've got the stuff we expect. So we've got position, size, segments, all this jazz. And next to some of these, we've got these little icons, and these represent your mouse, okay? So the mouse button to the left and then the direction on the right, which means inside the viewport we can just drag the associated thing in a direction indicated and it'll do the thing. So in this case our default mapping is right click left and right will affect the number of segments, and then middle click left and right will affect the radius, which means that if I'm just creating a shape from scratch, instead of having to manually go over to this thing here, I can just go and do this and say, oh, I want this many segments and I want it to be this much roundness, please. And it makes it extremely quick. And all tools in Modo have some default omni-haul assignments, which are these things here. And you can create new ones. Let's say, for example, I want my position to be bound to the left mouse up and down for whatever reason. I can simply hover over here, hold down left and drag in a direction. In this case, I've dragged to the right, which means holding left anywhere in the viewport now and dragging left and right will move this on X. It's pretty cool. These save as well, so if you make one of these assignments, they'll persist until next time you use the tool, which is kind of the default Modo behavior for tools. But if you don't like it, you can just right click and do clear this hauling assignment, or alternatively you can just clear all of the hauling assignments if you don't like them or if you want to reset them. Make sense? Cool. So there's option one for making a shape. Look at our lovely rectangle. Isn't that wonderful? And yeah, we still have the tool active, so we can still make changes until we decide we want to drop it. So let's put this into the 0, 0 spot, which is down here. And a lot of times in applications, you have to do this: 0, tab, 0, tab, 0, tab. I pressed minus there, but you know what I mean. And That's all cool, but there's a nice thing here inside Modo where if you click this little icon here, this activates one of several proportional modes. If I tap it once, the icon turns into an equal. So if I then tap 1 and press enter, it will set it to 1 meter on every axis. And then if I click this again, I get proportional, and the third one adds to the value you have selected. This is really useful for a bunch of different things. Anyway, we're happy and we've made our shape. Let's press Q and now we have a lovely cube. Imagine that. There's a second way, which is the one I do, to be honest, most of the time, is, and like I said before, we have no mesh item in here. So if we were to want to draw into a mesh, we need to have some sort of object, like an empty mesh. We do that probably pressing N, and then we can just draw a rectangle in, and then we could also draw a circle, a sphere into it, and they would both exist in the same mesh object. But if I just want a mesh object that contains one thing to get started with, I just hold down Shift and a little plus icon turns up here, and I can just click in this cube and look at that. I've got my default setup for a cube. It runs a little macro, and now I've got a meter by meter cube. We can check its size by clicking this little measure thing. A meter by meter cube that's just in the center of my scene. This is your Modo equivalent of a default cube. Imagine that. So that's great. And this works with all the other tools. So we've got, our regular stuff, and we've got fun things like a utar teapot and all that kind of stuff if you want to have a utar teapot, as well as a text tool. Draw tools, we'll go into these in a different video. It's all 3D stuff, guy. But the next thing I kind of want to talk about is selection, because that's a thing in Modo when you've got your mesh, right? And how do you make selections? A pont. A pont? There's a few ways to do this, and selections are like a particular strength in Modo, I guess. The selections are very, very good. And it goes a lot deeper than this video, but I'm just doing sort of a basic primer on the basics of selections inside Modo. We have a nice empty scene, but we need some geometry to work on. So we're going to use our very fancy clicker thing to have something in the viewport method. So we're going to hold down Shift and click on a cube to have a lovely cube in the middle of our scene. Look at that. And, well, how do we now select it? So obviously we click, but if we get into component selections, they're across here. So vertices, edges, polygons, click the thing, it does the thing, but they're also connected. Well, they've also got keyboard shortcuts. So 1, 2, and 3. So 1 for verts, 2 for edges, 3 for polygons, and as you guessed it, 5 for items. See, got you. 5 is for items, and 4 is selecting by material. And compared to some other software, Modo doesn't have an explicit move versus edit mode for geometry. They're just selection types, because the way selections work in Modo, they're very interconnected, wibbly wobbly. They're very good. Anyway, that makes sense as you use it some more. But yeah, 5 is item mode. It just treats anything as an item if you have it in item mode, and that's how that works. Anyway, we have our geometry. Let's make some selections. The main thing we do in any bit of software. So we go into polygon mode, and we can do it by clicking it or pressing 3. Left-clicking the viewport will select a polygon. If we double-click, this will select everything. In fact, actually selecting everything that's connected. More on that in a second. And we're going to press D a couple of times to do a subdivision and make ourselves a nice quad sphere. And you can do a non-subdivision style subdivision, like a faceted style, by pressing Shift D, and you can do that kind of subdivision if that's what you want to do. But we're going to press D a few times and just make ourselves a quad sphere. So the default selection style in Modo works like so. You can see I have a little blue square from where I'm hovering, and this is like a raycasting based selection thing. It feels really nice. I actually modded this into Blender, something very similar, but there's something about selections in Modo that feel very precise, very good. I don't know why. Might just be a muscle memory thing or, bias, but I like it. It feels pretty good. You can also right click and get a lasso selection. Clicking without dragging, you can see different styles, rectangle, circle, etc. And yeah, if you middle click and do a lasso selection, it works as a select through, so you can select through geometry. This is useful if you want to select something without turning on symmetry, or if you want to select something inside something else. It's very, very nice. Just middle clicking anywhere. This works with the same set of styles. We also have, which I literally never use, in the select menu, we have the shortest path mode, which does basically this. It sort of pre-highlights a loop. If you hold down Shift, it will then select that loop, and you can do this thing. I never use this, but I know people who do, and they say they like it. But, even each one to their own. There's also lazy selection. I should know what that does. I really don't. I think it's like some sort of like painty thing. I don't actually remember. Either way, you can use that as well. Maybe Google it. Moving on. So, as I said before, double click is not select all, it is select connected. So if I delete a loop, in this case loop selections is select any more than one bit of geometry, one polygon, and then press L, it will select the loop. If I delete that, double click, I can then select everything connected. I can invert that selection by clicking the close bracket button. There we go, to remember that. Or alternatively, to double clicking, I can just press the open bracket button to do that. To select all, which I never use to be honest, is Alt-Shift-A. There we go. I do it so infrequently I don't remember the keyboard shortcut, but there we go. Inverting selection is on blah blah blah. Left bracket. Inverting connected is Shift that bracket. Connected is that bracket. Also, these guys will cover just now. So once you've got a loop selected, let's go back a couple of steps and undestroy this. There we go. If we have a loop selected, we select two bits of geometry. This works in both directions, like so. Whoop. It's very nice. And the selections in Modo, you can see already, are very clever. So not only can we make selections like thusly so, obviously holding down Shift will add to selections, but if we don't want to do it this way, we can just press up on our keyboard and it will connect. It will select the next thing Modo thinks you want to select. And if you hold it down, it will go all the way around. If you press down, it will go backwards. There we go. Very nice. Also, for a loop selected, we can press left and right on our keyboard to select the next and previous loop on our model, which is also incredibly useful. You can use it just to check how continuous your loops are on a model. You have to look at them, you can just do this, and if it breaks, you know you've got a problem. But you can hold down Shift to add to your selection. It's all very quick and it's all very nice. There's more exotic ways to make selections as well. For example, you can drag out a little thing and then holding Control Shift and double clicking will do the select connected, but only inside the boundary of your select. And there is an article on the website. There's a load more selection stuff, but this is sort of all the basic things. It's all pretty good. And once you've got a selection, what else can you do with it? Well, we've got verts. Let's go to verts, and we've lost our selection. Lame. No, it's not lame, it's fine. So I think in Blender by default, if you change modes, it persists, the selection carries over. But in Modo, it doesn't necessarily have to. But what it can do is hold different selections all at once. So if I go to verts, I can select this little row of verts here by just painting in the viewport, this styly, and go back to polygons, and it'll remember both selections. But if I want to move this selection over to verts, I can just hold down Alt and click, and it will then convert that selection to verts. I can also just hold down Shift in this case, Alt in this case 2, and I'll convert that selection to edges. It's pretty cool. That's quite fun. And another thing that's quite nice is Modo gives you really quick access to selection sets. So if I'm working on a bunch of geometry, let's say imagine something interesting here. There's this little button up here, which is for creating selection sets. So if I give this little click and drag this out, with any popover menu in Modo, if you drag it away from where it starts or tap this button, it'll automatically pin itself. It's very nice. Anyway, so if we come down to here and do new set, and we'll call this Dave the Polys. You can see I've recorded this more than once. And I've also corrected my grammar. Should be polys? Polys? That'll do, that looks right. And we've got a selection. So there we go. And yeah, you can add stuff to selection, remove it. So if I want to add these to it, I can do add to selection, select something else, click on this quick select, Dave, however you say that, click it, it will bring up my selection. If I do this, I'll go add to set, come to here, Dave the Polys, look at him, isn't he fancy? Anyway, let's turn that off.